I went to urgent care this morning, Jen, and I thought I might have, a 24-hour tumor. And it turns out I have a cold.
Everybody, what you need to know about us is that, like, Sarah has been to see more doctors in the past, like, morning than I have in the past probably 2 years.
Morning. Listen, everybody, I have what I have self-diagnosed as stress hypochondria.
It's like, but I've known you for a long time. I think there's a little bit of a low key.
I'm pretty stressed. I don't know if I've told this story on the podcast, but we have new listeners, and I can't remember telling it. So if I have, it was a long time ago. But obviously, we live in New York City, and I once was in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, and this was years ago. I was in Williamsburg, and the light turned green to cross, and I stepped off the curb, and there was a shout, and I turned, and a woman smoking a cigar, riding a bicycle, ran over my foot.
Sure.
It's not important that she was smoking a cigar, but I feel like that really like colors the story in a certain way, right? And she ran over my foot, and it really hurt, and like she didn't care. She just kept going. And like 2 days later, I had a pain in my foot because it had been run over by a woman smoking a cigar on a bicycle. And I turned to Eric and absolutely, fully seriously, I said to him, "Do you think I have diabetes?" And he said, "Yes, it's bicycle diabetes."
Okay, that's honestly pretty amazing.
So now, whenever I go into one of my stress hypochondria situations,
there's a name for that, bicycle diabetes.
He says, "Is it bicycle diabetes?"
Yeah. Have I told the story about Mr. Reed's romance on the podcast at the White Sox game? Have I told the story?
Oh, is this with the baseball?
Yes. No, I told it.
Did you? I know the story.
I know, and did I just tell you?
Maybe you told me on the phone. Tell everybody. Everyone, just skip ahead like a minute or two if you've heard this one before.
It's not like super important. I'm just saying we went to a White Sox game with some friends of his who were in town. They were playing the Padres. So it was like a couple weeks ago. It was like a huge crowd because it was like Hispanic Heritage Night. One of the best things about this, before I get to like the hand and the baseball and the nose, is at one point they put an older gentleman up on the Jumbotron, and like the whole crowd kind of like whooped. And I was like, okay, I don't know who that is. And I looked him up, and he was like the king of the accordion. And I was like, what a time, right?
Amazing.
Yeah. So anyway, what happened is we were like on the first base line about 6 rows back. I'm going to tell you there's like these nets to protect people from like fly balls and foul balls and stuff. But apparently they just get rid of a lot of balls in baseball. So after someone hits ones and then it's not good anymore. I had no idea. And so they would come into the dugout.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's the bench. Correct word.
Correct. Mm-hmm. And they would like throw the balls up at people kind of in our section to get rid of them because you can't use them again. Anyway, I was like, there is a reason those gentlemen out there are catching those things with gloves, so I'm going to stay away from this. Mm-hmm. So one kind of came towards us, and Little Romance was next to me, and I think he is also the same.
And he apparently like a well-trained child.
He didn't duck exactly, but apparently Mr. Reed's Romance had a whole better view of the thing. It bounced off of the empty seat next to Little Romance and into the face of the woman behind us. And I think she probably broke her nose. Yeah, literally. It was honestly terrifying. And she ended up having to be taken away. I'm sure she went to the ER.
This is terrible. This is why baseball, it's so long. People don't pay attention the whole way because it's such a long game.
I mean, I don't want to joke, but I just kept thinking of that thing in Clueless where she's like, my tennis coach doesn't want me to do this. He doesn't want random balls flying at my face.
There goes your social life.
There's a reason for that. Okay. So anyway, the ball hit her and rolled towards my husband, who kind of grabbed it, but he was so focused on her, which I didn't really realize at the time. And he had his arm, he was like kind of in the row behind us, so his arm was sort of twisted, and then someone grabbed it out of his hand, and he ended up breaking his hand. But like as a metacarpal, he didn't go to the ER for like 2 days because...
Yeah. See, he didn't think he had a tumor.
Exactly.
Which is pretty much what I had a sore throat. And I was like, I haven't had a sore throat since I was 12. It's obviously a tumor. No, it's just a Danish cold.
Sure. Well, so Welcome to the podcast, everybody.
Yeah, welcome everyone. Fate of Mates. I'm Sarah McLean. I read romance novels and I write them.
I'm Jennifer Prokop, a romance reader and editor. And you were traveling and catching colds.
I got a Danish cold. Actually, I don't think it was a Danish cold. I think I got it from JFK because it feels like Scandinavia is like too clean to give you a cold, you know?
Sure.
Listen, everybody, I was in Scandinavia. I was in Denmark and Sweden. And boy, what a beautiful part of the planet.
Yeah.
Just lovely, crisp and clean. And there are signs in all the hotels that says, please drink the water. It's some of the best in the world. Like they're
amazing.
So like, you know, this is
civilized.
This is what a welfare state gets you, I guess. So it was great. I went to a book festival called the Gothenburg Book Festival, although a local in Gothenburg, Sweden, told me that if you're going to pronounce it the local way, you have to say it. You have to say Göteborg in a very angry way. So there it is. I went to the Göteborg.
I don't want to live in an angry place. I really don't, but okay.
Here's the fun thing, though. Swedes are very nice. And they all really want to show off their really tremendously crackerjack English skills. And so everybody speaks English. The country has a 99% literacy rate. What are we even doing? But
more on that later.
This tremendous book festival where 100,000 Swedes, which is 1% of the population of Sweden. I mean, I want you to imagine where we would be at if we as a country had 1% of the population come to a book festival. It would be incredible. Anyway, 1% of the population of Sweden descends on the town of Göteborg, and they have a banger of a festival, and it was great. And this year was the first year that romance was featured as part of the festival. And so there were a handful of Swedish romance novelists. There are actually only a handful of Swedish romance novelists, and I actually, Jen, thought like, it would be really fun for the Trailblazers series to think about like if we can find some of the firsts in foreign languages to come on and like be a part of, because we are such a U.S. centered, focused, obviously for lots of reasons, focused like podcast. But Simona Arnstedt is a Swedish romance. I read a book by her. She's translated into the United States. Her book All In was translated into English. But she is like the first Swedish romance novelist. Her first book came out in 2010, and she writes historicals and contemporaries and romantic suspense, but in Swedish. And then there were a couple of others who are more recent, but literally like a handful. And romance in general has only just recently started to be translated into Swedish. Like, I was there because they just translated 9 Rules and 10 Ways. Those are out now. And then 11 Scandals comes out in April. And so they have like the Bridgerton series. Julia Quinn was there. But apparently it's like really very fresh. And so this was the first year that romance had like a stage at the festival, and the theme of the festival was love and lust.
Ooh.
And so like there were people all across, like in the crime, you know, Sweden is where crime comes from. Not crime the stuff, but crime the fiction.
I mean, those Swedes.
Apparently there are like a dozen Swedish crime writers who are translated like all over the world and are like enormous. I met Camilla Lackberg, who I've never read anything by, but she is the third best-sellingest like author in Sweden ever, behind the person who wrote Pippi Longstocking, the guy who wrote the girl with the dragon tattoo, and then it's her.
Wow. And
I sat next to this guy, and Jen, I was so sad you weren't there because I feel like, well, no, I really like podcasted him. And I felt really bad for this poor man who was just trying to have a dinner and like was stuck next to me. We have the same publisher, and he was like stuck next to me having to speak English to me all night. Perfect English, because apparently that's just what everybody in Sweden does. And he was sitting next to me, and his name is Anders de la Motte. And he writes crime fiction in Sweden, and he is translated into the United States. And so we talked about genre carrying the myth, like,
oh, interesting,
the whole time. And he also writes, so he writes like thrillers and crime. And then he and his wife, who is was a professor, and now they are together writing. They write murder mysteries. And so we talked about, and I actually don't want to give too much away, because I'd actually like to have him on the podcast. Like, he's so interesting, the way that he talked about like the myth and how it fits into that. But I am going to share one thing, which is, we started talking about it. And so he asked me the question that you get asked all the time about romance, which is, does it have to have a happy ending? And I was like, it in fact does need to have a happily ever after. Like, that's the whole ball game. And he was like, interesting. So like, what about like Casablanca? And I was like, nope, that's just a love story. It's just, and so we were talking, and then we were talking about like archetypal characters and then tropes, and he was saying that like murder mystery is really where tropes live. Like, mystery is where tropes live, and like crime is like a different thing. Like, thrillers are a different thing. And so we were talking about it, and I was like, you know what I love? He was like, you know exactly what this man was experiencing.
Sure, yes. The full Sarah.
I was like, you know what I love? He was like, I think you're going to tell me. So he's like, more wine, please. Put me next to this lady. And I was like, I love it when the lights go off in a room, and then everyone screams, and then the lights come on, and there's a dead body in the middle of the room. And he was like, I actually really love that too. Like, that's a classic trope from a murder mystery, right? And he's like, what is the romance equivalent? Jen, what is the romance equivalent of the lights go out? Everybody play at home.
Only one bed?
That's what I said. Only one bed. And he goes, what's that? And I explained it. I was like, you're like on a road trip. You're like with somebody who you either don't know them very well, or you hate them, or you're in a position, they're your boss. Like, there's a million reasons why you shouldn't be with them. And then you get to the hotel desk, and he said, and there's only one room. And I was like, yes.
Correct.
And it was just really lovely.
That's fun.
Because it was like, game meets game.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Game recognizes game. Anyway, I hope he'll be on. I told him to come on with his wife too. And like, we'll talk about how mysteries and thrillers and crime novels all carry the myth. But yeah, it was really fun. And then we went to Denmark. Eric and I went to Denmark. We haven't been away since, we had a child, for God's sake.
Yeah.
And it was really lovely. And I met my Danish publishers, and they were very sweet. And Storms is coming out there next year. So if you're in Denmark, look forward to that. And yeah, we just had a nice time.
That's so fun.
Everybody I met was like, how's everything? And I was like, and I kept going, I'm so sorry for everything we are doing to you people, because I really think everybody's worried.
Sure.
Is the takeaway. I've now been in, 2 hemispheres, like 4 separate countries over the last month. And everybody I've met is like, hi, we're worried. And I'm like, yeah, we are too.
The theme of today's show.
So sorry that our export right now is not as great as romance novels.
This week's episode of Faded Mace is brought to you by Lindsay Barrett, author of Savannah Royals.
Okay, here's another con artist, Jen, and this one's a lady con artist. This one is set in Savannah during the Prohibition era, and Katerina Quinn masquerades as a well-bred lady of Savannah during the day, but at night she runs a ragtag gang of con artists and thieves. She is fully professional, and she never, ever makes mistakes, except Enter Matthew DeMolin, a witty, charming, newly minted physician whose family just happens to be part of the highly exclusive, extraordinarily wealthy American dynasties of the Rockefellers, the Astors, the Vanderbilts. And the thief inside Kat starts to salivate. What she is expecting that she can just hang on Matthew's arm and head right into this world and just clean up. And we kind of love that for her. The problem is that Savannah's turning into a real mess. There is a street war brewing among the city gangs there. There is a jewel heist planned against Matthew's family. And Kat's worlds are colliding and not in a great way. Remember how I said that she never makes a mistake? She realizes that she just might have made a mistake in falling in love with the wrong man and having to decide between her past and the people in it and her future and the man she's hoping to spend it with.
Ooh, sounds juicy. So if you are interested in a Prohibition-era heist romance, and why wouldn't you be, then Savannah Royals is probably for you. If your podcasting app supports it, you can click on the chapter title right now to be taken to buy the book. Thanks to Lindsay Barrett for sponsoring this week's episode.
A couple of weeks ago, I said I thought that we should do an episode because we had been talking for several years. You're in Chicago, I'm in New York City. We've been talking for a long time about we should do a Chicago episode and we should do a New York episode. And just like many, many episodes, everybody that we, have, and we just have a big list of ideas and that's on there and we've just never gotten to it. And in the last month or so, there have been a number of movements across the country. And actually, I should say, most recently in Portland.
Yeah. But just as this is happening, literally in the last 24 or 48
days
hours
ago. Yeah. And so, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago, I texted Jen and I said, I think it's time for you to do the Chicago episode. And I think it should be Chicago, Washington, D.C., and Los Angeles, because those three cities are places where the National Guard has been activated. ICE is helicoptering onto apartment buildings. It is chaos. While I was away, there was a meeting of, all of the generals were brought to Quantico by that terrible, lame ass man. And, he brought them all in and said some terrible, scary stuff about the military and civilians. Listen, I think here's where we are. I think if you listen to the podcast, you know that Jen and we have been political forever. We continue to be political. We continue to be speaking up. And we, like so many people over the last, 10 months have been not sure what to do, how. That doesn't mean we haven't been acting, but it just feels like every day there's a new thing. We have thought about the new season of the podcast. We are, obviously you can probably tell from this is our fourth episode of the podcast for the season. We're thinking about talking about romance in a very intentional way right now. And that's not to say that we didn't do that before, but the goal for this season is for us to really think about how we can promote books and authors and stories that help us not just survive the emotional roller coaster that we're in with, choosing joy, choosing books that give us a lot of joy and entertainment, but also books that ensure that we are connecting with places, people, communities, and stories that inspire us to continue to speak up. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think so. I think, one of the things that Sarah said, and it's just really important for us to say, reading is not activism.
No.
Right? I mean, we are not here to say you can just hide away and read romance novels and, the world will get better and you've done your part. We would never say that. But I think we also all realize or feel that for a lot of people, romance is does feel like a a retreat, a safe space, like, right, like a place where you can, kind of withdraw from the world if you need to at those times. But that doesn't mean like putting your head in the romance stand.
No, but reading can be inspiring in the sense that
I think that's
can make us think about, listen, if the work of the genre is to drive characters to be their best selves and to leave the world in a better place than it was at the beginning of a book, then our work as readers is to be inspired to do that in our real life.
Yeah.
And so today we are going to talk about books that are set in Chicago, DC, and LA. 3 cities that where we are connected, where there are people who we love, and also places that we are thinking about regularly.
Yeah.
We are also going to give you a list of booksellers in those places that we think you can support, organizations that we hope you will support to ensure that what's happening in those places with ICE, with illegal detentions, with the National Guard deployments, with people who are fighting on the ground in those places can be supported. And we are hoping that you will take this episode or these books, read them, and then move forward in the world and speak up on behalf of these communities of people who
are being targeted, right?
Targeted. Yeah. Jen lives in Chicago, everybody.
I think the thing that's been really interesting is when ICE first came to Chicago, right? There's a detention center that is in the kind of a first ring suburb called Broadview. And that is kind of the primary place that they are. If you've seen interactions between protesters and ICE, or standing outside of they're standing on the roof and firing pepper balls and rubber bullets at people and tear gas, right? That is sort of the place that's happening. And from there, ICE is basically it's a reign of terror throughout the city. Just yesterday, they were up in a neighborhood on kind of the northwest side, and someone from ICE literally threw a can of, I don't know if it's tear gas, but some sort of chemical, right? A gas outside of the car, a block away from an elementary school, right outside of a grocery store. There was talk of them doing something called Freaky Friday, which is they're essentially going to try and pressure immigrants and children, right, to leave, hoping that their families will essentially go in with them. They brought in Black Hawk helicopters and rappelled down to a building which is in the South Shore, which is actually very close to my neighborhood, really close to where I live, and essentially arrested everyone in there. They were zip tying children, and then really they ended up arresting, I think, all told, 2 people, or charging 2 people. And so they terrorized an entire neighborhood and, all the people that lived in that building. And what they were really doing was making Instagram videos, right? They just released a video of them, looking cool, I guess, to whoever they would think that. And it's just been really scary, right? I'm having conversations with my colleagues who are do you feel safe? Do we need to set up are we picking you up so you don't have to be on public transportation or riding your bike, or right, thinking about kids and families and sending your kid to school. And it's just been, I don't know, it's just been really awful. And I'm not personally right now, right, feeling I'm in danger, right? I'm a white lady driving around by myself most of the time, but the city itself feels under siege, is maybe the way to say it. And they're getting more and more right, they started off kind of in the suburbs, and then it's moving more and more into the city. And so I don't know. I don't know what to say. Like, it is almost impossible for me to believe that anyone who reads the articles or looks at this footage would think anything but, like, we are now fully under, like, fascist control. Mm-hmm. And it's fucking terrifying.
Yes. Some things that I want to say that I just want to say to those of you who are listening. In show notes this week, I know we talk about show notes every week, but this week show notes are vital for you to look at, aside from nonprofits and other organizations, which we will talk about. I do want to just call out a couple of things. Like, one is if you are not in these cities that we're talking about right now, I urge you not to feel as though like this won't come for you. Like, these are this is all the start of a larger plan. This is all, the theory is that, you know, if they can do it in these cities, then they can do it everywhere. I want to say that there is, and I'm going to put this in show notes this week, but there is a tremendous piece of research from a woman who researches fascism and tyranny that says only 3.5% of a population has to resist in order for fascism, for authoritarianism to be defeated. That is not that many people. That is 4 in every 100 people. We are not lost. Hope is not lost. Hope, Amanda on TikTok and Instagram and Threads, she's under Amanda's Mild Takes. She said yesterday, like, hope is not a like static noun. It is an act. It is active. It is an action. Like, we continue to have hope. We continue to stand up. I urge you to be one of the 4 in 100. There is a No Kings protest scheduled for October 18th, and it will be everywhere, all around the country, even in your tiny little town. If you're looking for real people in the real outside world of the internet, like beyond your headphones, beyond your rectangles, I urge you to go to mobilize.us, which is a place where you can put in your zip code and say, like, I'm in a tiny little town in Maine and I'm looking for people to be active with, and you will be able to find the nearest groups of active resistors. This is going to be vital. I mean, I think it's vital now. I think speaking up online is very important, obviously, but if you have the space, the time, the ability, the willingness to go out and meet real people in the world, other humans in the human world outside, and be active together. One, it is deeply hopeful. It really feels, I will tell you, it feels good to be with other people doing things. And also it is how in the event that this all does sort of take the turn that we are preparing for, online won't be a safe space. But real people in the real world, a community of people who are active together, will be the safest way for us to stand up.
Yeah. And I think the other thing to say is, like, you can also just find out where these things are happening and show up. You know, if you're worried
you don't have to plan it.
You don't have to plan it. You don't have to put your name or email or anything, right? You know what I mean? It's okay to just show up and go there. And it's also okay to do things with smaller groups in your community.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, and so one of the things that you can really do is, like, find out, like, who is, what do you care about? And then find an organization in your community that is, like, doing that thing, and then just go help and do it. And so, food banks are preparing for, right? Like a huge wave of people who are going to need assistance, right? I mean, so you can just be like, look, I care about people eating. And so I'm going to go and, like, volunteer to food bank and maybe what you can do right now is make donations, right? So there is a organization here on the South Side that I support called the Brave Space Alliance, and it's just to support like queer and trans people, and it is mostly on the South Side of Chicago. So you can really just also figure out like who is doing this work. What is, I care about kids in school. I care about people eating. I care about, right? Like there's a really cool initiative that it's like people just have like big kind of food pantry, like urban fridges, and you just like go to these like outdoor fridges and like fill them up for people who need them, right? So, I mean, I think the thing that is really important for you to hear from us is there is something you can do. There's something you can do. Maybe it is, like one other thing is like we have talked about before, but today we're going to actually list some places is, there are lots of the best place to get news right now is independent news organizations. Mm-hmm. These are the people on the ground who are doing this work. And, in Chicago in particular, there are a handful of places that I just, again, I'm like, I don't know how to help you, but I will give you money, right? Block Club Chicago is like a news collective. They essentially were founded after all of the local newspapers got like kind of, and they have like sued ICE for information and are doing all this reporting. Unraveled Press is like it's two people, I think, but they go to every protest. They take video, they take pictures, they say what's going on. I follow sort of religiously. And again, I'm just like, I can give you some money. And then the Tribe with 2 I's, TRIIBE, does a ton of reporting about, essentially like Black Chicago. I think that might actually be like nationwide, but because I've been reading so much Chicago news, in LA, there's LAtaco.com, which does a bunch of reporting. So, like, and if you find one of those, go to one of those places on social media. And, again, all these links will be in show notes. And then you can see, like, who else are they following? Who are the people that they are reposting? And then you can, right, who are the photographers they are working with? Right? And then you can find out more, because the other thing you need to understand is how vital it is going to be to have sources of information that you trust. Mm-hmm. And those are likely to be. And now, meanwhile, I want to say, like, I have been really impressed also, like, the biggest kind of article about what happened at that South Shore building was from the Chicago Sun-Times, which is like a legacy newspaper that's been around for a long time. WBEZ, which is my local NPR station, has done a lot of reporting.
I will say, so NPR has taken the gloves off. They just lost all their federal funding. And so now local NPR stations.
I think local NPR stations are doing way more, I think, than. So, I mean, I think it's kind of finding those places in your community. I just told you the ones in mine. And then also, I think it's really important to like Google specifically like immigrants' rights groups. So in Chicago, there is the Illinois Coalition for Immigrant and Refugee Rights, and they have essentially like an ICE hotline. And you can call in if you see ICE and say, right, like, here's who I saw and here's how they were, right? And there's like a little, like sort of thing you should know. I can't remember even what it is right now. And it's like, here's, where were they and how many ICE officers were there? Were they armed? Were they out on the street? Were they in, trucks or vehicles? And, now what's happening is I'm seeing lots of videos of people in Chicago. Like when you see ICE, you just like honk your horn like crazy and everyone else does too. And then it's kind of like telling everybody that that's what's happening. So giving money to organizations that are like have trained people who know how to like go into those situations and interview people, find out what happened, and that's the part that I think is really important right now is who is doing the work of letting us all know what's happening. How can you support those people?
Exactly.
Yeah. Can I just say one other thing? We talk about bookstores.
Yep.
On the Instagram account, again, I will link to this of, Latinx Publishing, right? So Latinos in Publishing, they have a list of like essentially Latinx owned bookstores around the country. And like there are 2 specifically in Chicago. Most of them are like for families and kids. Only one is brick and mortar. One does more like pop-up and bookmobile stuff. So it's Viva Los Libros and then also Los Amigos Books. So you can also, right, like let's say you're not from Chicago, right? There's not a store like this. You can set your bookshop account to have that be your own bookstore. And then, you know, when you order books, those bookstores are getting your support and your money. So we've talked over and over again about how community bookstores can be a place where you can find and support like the communities in your town. Okay, that's it.
We love you, Chicago. We love you so much because you are a town that has produced a bunch of romance novels that we really love. And not just like the birth of sports romance with Susan Elizabeth Phillips and the Chicago Stars, which actually we're not going to talk about today. And for lots of we're gonna talk about a lot of different kinds of books, but I do want to say that I limited my book choices for the day to books where they really feel like the town.
Okay.
Like there is a real sort of sense of like these people are inside the city or inside the community around the city. And so Chicago Stars, obviously that's a very different kind of vibe. But that might be the first time I ever really thought about Chicago. Reading those early SCP books.
And I have obviously some Chicago books, but I also like when we're done with Chicago, have a couple of like Chicago authors, right? People that I have met every time I go to a signing in Chicago, they are there, right? People who are just really like, I don't know, a part of like the romance community fabric of the city. And so even if I'm not necessarily
you should talk about them now.
Okay. So
since you're talking about them.
Yes. Okay. So there are a couple people that I have just met. Okay. So first of all, I want to call out, there is a Chicago North romance writers group. And they are, disaffiliated from RWA, and it's just like a powerhouse. These are just some of my favorite people. And every other year they have a big romance writing conference. And it is next year, and it's downtown in Chicago. Sometimes it's out at O'Hare, called Spring Fling. And it is April 16th, 18th. The headliners are Adriana and Brenda Jackson, which is pretty great. And they always have like amazing like classes and master classes for writers. And then like the last day is a signing, and that's kind of like open to the public. And there are a couple people that I just feel like I don't know, like I meet every time. So I want to really specifically call out Pamela Knight and Shannon Schroeder, who like run these events, and they're awesome. Kelly Farmer writes a lot of queer romance, queer hockey romance. She's great. Victoria Hamill, I've met a bunch of times. She writes like really like kind of sweet, like not like low heat necessarily, but just like small town romance that are kind of like, every time I read them, I'm like, this is like the South suburbs. It's not really Chicago itself. And then I think people that I have like kind of met over and over again are Kathy Douglas, who writes really terrific Harlequin romances. Like, I think mostly she writes in like the special edition. I was reading one this morning where I was like, no absolute fucking way, which is, the book is called, did I write this down? Something about getting Charlotte back. I'll just look at the show notes, everybody, where a woman gets back together with the man who left her at the altar. And I was like, excuse me.
All right.
Ooh. And Chandra Bloomberg writes a lot of really great romances set in Chicago. I was reading one this morning. It's not mostly in Chicago. It's only kind of begins around the Great Lakes. It's called Second Tide's the Charm, where she's a shark researcher. And I was like, so she's leaving, like she's essentially on the Great Lakes.
I was going to say, you have that t-shirt.
Yes.
Little Romance has a t-shirt.
Opening scene is that she's working like a touristy, she might actually be in Michigan, like a tourist trap on like sort of on Lake Michigan. And like essentially kind of a kid was like, there aren't sharks out there. And she was like, yes, there are. just like messing with this kid. And she writes a lot of great, like one of her first books, I think is called like Digging Up Love, where a woman in the south suburbs finds like a dinosaur bone in her like yard, and like a paleontologist has to come out, and that's who she falls in love with. So, you know, there are a lot of like local people who are just like a part of the like real fabric of like kind of the romance community here. And they all write great books. So I will just put all those names in show notes, and also put the Chicago North romance writers. And if you are an aspiring writer and, you know, cannot get to Steamy Lit this year at the end of the month, then consider coming to Chicago next spring. It's like a 2-day event, and they have great classes.
This week's episode of Fade Mates is sponsored by Jamie Varon, author of Charlie Quinn, Let's Go.
One of my favorite romance tropes, like, is it's my 30th birthday. I need to get my life right.
1,000%. I mean, I've written it twice, so obviously I love it too.
Keep doing it, right? So here we have Charlie Quinn, who is kind of a control freak, and she has really been, you know, their life has rules and you should follow them. But on her 30th birthday, she is laid off. Her boyfriend breaks up with her because she's too predictable, and she spends the night with violent food poisoning. And it's like she hits rock bottom so fast she can't even kind of believe how she got there. So she has no choice but to return to her childhood home in LA, where her little sister, who is a real free spirit, decides that the only way to solve Charlie's problem is to have like a detox from her controlling ways. And the way this is going to work is, for a month, anything the sister says, like, hey, I've got an idea, Charlie is going to have to agree. And so, you know, she's like, what more can happen? Everything has already been crushed out of me. Well, there's a serendipitous encounter with her high school crush, and this leads to a month of like steamy, no strings romance. But Charlie is really starting to question, like really realizing, you know what? I am actually better, stronger, faster, like, right? Like maybe I should like let go and embrace this messy, bold, and exciting life that I'm living. And yet, of course, she is so afraid that if she does that, it'll all be a disaster again. So what's going to happen to Charlie?
If you also want to know what's going to happen to Charlie, then you can read this Second Chance. Find out what's going to happen after your 30th birthday, find love after your 30th birthday, and realize that your little sister is brilliant in all things, then you can read this book right now in print, ebook, or audiobook. And if your podcasting app supports it, you can click on the chapter title right now to be taken to buy the book. Thanks to Jamie Varon for sponsoring this week's episode. Chicago books. You start.
Okay. I'm going to talk about Noel the First by Nicole Falls. This is actually it's in the Holiday Sisters series. And the shtick of this is like actually really funny. Noel was born on Christmas Day. And she was the oldest of us. And then her parents, I guess, the way I kind of read this, were like so taken with the idea of having like holiday babies that then they like planned them all out. And so all of her so she has like 4 sisters, and they all have like, you know, were supposed to be born like on or near a major holiday. And then they all have like kind of like holiday themed names. And the youngest is actually like Juju, but she was supposed to be Erica for America because she was supposed to be born on July 4th, but came early, which is really funny. Anyway, Noel the First. I know, right? Amazing.
I just had this moment of like, are a lot of people named Erica for America?
I don't know.
I've never had that moment before.
I really did. I really was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, all right.
Right? Amazing.
Sure.
So in Noel, so this is the first book of the series, which has, right, each sister has a book. And what happens in this one is, and they're all like novella length, like this is a quick, fun read. It is Noelle's old neighbor, Jay, like, right, they grew up next door to each other. So Noelle is living in the family home and Jay moves back home to next door. And like this family was like super into the holidays, obviously. And he notices that like the house isn't really decorated for Christmas and like what is going on. Now, meanwhile, he and a friend have like a company where they like plan bar crawl because he's like, white people love a bar crawl, which is really funny. And so she meets up with Jay again, and he essentially like kind of challenges her to do like a 12 days of Christmas type thing with him to get her back in the holiday spirit. And it involves like a lot of, yeah, right. It's super cute. And like basically the falling out they had, and it's like really handled very quickly. Like this isn't like one of those things where you're like, what happened is, he had gone to he went to Stanford, she went to Northwestern. So they fell out of touch. And he had a girlfriend that essentially like kind of like got on the text and like changed some things so that they hadn't talked to each other. And it turned out that this ex-girlfriend just was like threatened by Noelle. So anyway, it's really cute. Like, her nickname is like No in her family and he calls her Yes. And it's adorable. So yeah, it's really cute. So Noelle the First this is the first book of the Holiday Sister series, and they kind of live out in the burbs, but like the first one, they do some like Chicago things on his little 12 Days of Christmas thing. It's great. I think Nicole writes a great book.
I mean, yes. And we've talked about her a bunch on the podcast before. But yeah. All right, let me think for a second. Where do we go from here? I am going to talk about Becca Grishow's I'll Get Back to You, which is FF romance set. So Murphy, our heroine, has a she. Let me think for a second. Okay. Murphy, our heroine, has flunked out of college at the University of Illinois. She has been sort of she is a marketing major and she has to take accounting, and she's failed accounting, and she literally just has to like pass accounting in order to like succeed, and she just can't. And so her parents have sort of like she's left school, she's living with her parents, she is making like minimum wage, and she is with her, and we meet her kind of like in a state of just like, she's just like in full stasis, which is kind of where I want a romance heroine to begin. She's in a bar, feels like a Chicago moment, right?
Listen, like, Chicago loves a bar.
The holidays, and she is like home for she's home, like I said, in her like tiny small town, like in Geneva, Illinois. I don't know if this is a real place, but it's like it's like away from Chicago. And she basically like grew up in this town. She was the only lesbian in her class. And so now she's like home and kind of alone, and we meet her kind of like with her best friend, who is like doing that thing that best friends do, where she's like a senior at school, and the friend is still there and has this like new boyfriend from school. And like, they're kind of trying to like awkwardly avoid talking about college with her. And poor Kat is just sort of like, I'm sorry. And poor Murphy is like, just kind of like at sea, and she is feeling pretty miserable. And there's this great moment where her best friend is like, well, I mean, you could meet somebody. And she's like, where is a lesbian supposed to meet somebody like in this tiny small town bar, like in the middle of nowhere? And she's like, well, there must be some girl here who's like at least bi. And like, it's just a sort of like
amazing.
It feels like terrible. Anyway, so she goes and she ends up like in the bathroom, and there in the bathroom she meets this girl, Ellie, who she went to high school with, and who like was decidedly very straight in high school, but now is like like Murphy's pretty sure she's like kind of into her. And then they start like flirting and it's all pretty great. And then she discovers that Allie's mom is her accounting professor. And she is back. So like, and she is basically like, in order to go back to, she has to go back to school and like take accounting again. And so she's basically like, I cannot get involved with this woman because I need her mother to like me well enough that she'll pass me through accounting so I can actually like achieve something. Namely getting back to Chicago and like being out of her parents' house and like in a real life. And so the two of them kind of decide that they're going to like have a little bit of like a fake relationship at the mom's, essentially Ellie is like, wait, what if you fake relationship with me? And then my mom like really likes you. And then maybe, kind of everything will go to plan and we'll be able to like, and you'll be able to succeed in accounting, and also I will be able to be together. And it, of course, all like falls apart because, there's this sort of big question about like, is Murphy actually using Ellie for her mom? Is there, is this going to work? And it is a really like sweet, Christmassy, holiday-y, wintry romance that I think you'll enjoy.
I love it. It feels like it's been a minute since we have recommended the really terrific what is the name of this series? Like the Priscilla Oliveira series set in Chicago about the Match to Perfection series is what it's called. It's about three sisters, right? Remember? Mm-hmm. And so what happens is like, they're all like Chicago set. It's funny. I'm looking at these now and realizing I was like, I don't see the books. They've changed the covers, everybody. And the one that I really remember liking the best is Her Perfect Affair, which is number 2, because what happens is she essentially, Rosa has essentially has like a bit of a crush on this guy, and they have a one night stand at her sister's wedding, right? The wedding from book number 1, and she ends up being pregnant. So then, she and Jeremy have to like figure out what's going on with this. And yeah.
I was going to say, I like this one because it's like not a secret baby. It's like an accidental baby.
Right. Exactly. And these are also, if you're a person who's looking for, I think these are closed door romances. So, these are just like really terrific romances that capture both like the spirit of like this big family with the sisters. And I love a book with sisters. I don't think maybe because I don't have one.
Because you don't have one.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, sisters. And also just like Chicago itself. So, pick up Her Perfect Affair, which is book number 2, but there's 3 books in the series and they are all really great. The first one is, I think she's a dance teacher and he's divorced. And then in the third one, I think she is like I think she does maybe daycare or something, and he's a cop, which it was a different time.
I think that the great thing about all of Priscilla's books is also the great thing about Natalie Kanya's books, which is like there is this like real sense of like community, culture, family, like everything's messy, but they all love each other so much. And I think that's why, and Natalie also writes in Chicago. The series there is the Vega Family Love Stories. The first one is called A Proposal They Can't Refuse. That is not the one we read as a deep dive. Right?
We read the second one.
A dish best served hot.
Yeah.
I really love A Proposal They Can't Refuse because I'm sort of a sucker for like an Irish bartender. And also I picked it for this. And I know that you have Natalie on your list. Maybe you picked a different book. But I picked this one because I was also like, it feels like in Chicago we have to talk about an Irish bartender. Right? He's not a bartender. He's like a whiskey distiller, but whatever.
Same
alcohol
same
in
energy.
Ireland.
Right.
And so this is the one where like their grandfathers, this whole series has these grandfathers who are just like meddling, difficult, like old men who like real. What I love about this is such a like romance classic where like the grandparents.
Oh God, yeah, my
they've
favorite.
known it
right?
the whole way, all along. Like they've been orchestrating it all along, and here we are with these meddling grandfathers. And so the grandfathers are best friends. There is a building that is like one grandfather owns the building and is like wants to sell it. And the heroine of this book is she owns like her she has like a food like a restaurant and it's in this building, and she thinks that she can like the neighborhood is gentrifying. The building is about to be sold because they can sell it for $1 million trillion because gentrification, and basically like she has this plan to like enter the restaurant into a competition to like win enough money to like save the restaurant. And like the building also holds Liam's distillery, and Liam is just like, if you love a grumpy person, like he's just like a big grumpy Irish hero. And so their two grandfathers are best friends, and his grandfather tells him like pulls a real romance grandparent shtick here and says, I'm dying and I need to see you happy before I die. So they're both kind of her grandfather has said, like, you have to marry Liam for romance reasons. And his grandfather is like, I'm dying and I want to see you happy. So they fake date.
Sure.
In order to, like, make their grandfathers happy. Like, they have this sort of, like, plan to, like, trick them both into thinking that, like, that they're dating. And so, like, the building situation will be resolved. It's very sort of smoke and mirrorsy, because these grandfathers know exactly what's going on the whole time. And then there they are, fake dating, and then they want to make it real, which is exactly how a fake dating relationship would go. But the reason why I sort of thought about this is because it is this sort of, in this book, there's this like big Puerto Rican family on Camilla's side. And then on the other side, there's Liam and his like big Irish family. And it feels very Chicago.
Yeah.
Right. And so like the community feels Chicago, like Natalie's clearly from there. Like there's a lot of love for the city here. And also this kind of really big question about gentrification, which threads itself through the whole series. Like gentrification is a huge piece of
for
this
sure.
series. And it will be a piece of at least one of the series that we talk about in one of the other cities.
Yeah. One last author, I guess I want to shout out. If you are more of like, I love a dark romance, an author named Sherelle Green has an entire series called the Crown Legacy series, which is set in Chicago. And it's essentially, they're all like adopted siblings, right? Like sort of that found family, but now it's a criminal enterprise. I have also met Sherelle at a couple of events and just wanted to like shout her out. So I would like check out the Crown Legacy series. There's like a prelude book or like a preview book or a shorter novella. I think the first one though is called Sins of a Saint. So these are, again, like if you're looking for like a Chicago set dark romance written by a Chicago author, then that might be fun for you to check out. Crown Legacy.
I have also thinking about books that sort of transcend the city and like really speak to an immigrant experience. Sonali Dev's Bollywood Bride, and which we've talked about before on the podcast, and Change of Heart, which are in the same series and really they're really about like new immigrants to the United States, and like that sort of the fluid movement between culture across they're set in Mumbai. Bollywood Bride, at least, is set in Mumbai, in Bristol, England, and in Chicago. And then Change of Heart is two secondary characters from the Bollywood Bride in Chicago and then Mumbai. And then I do just want to call out Veronica Roth, who is not truly a romance novelist. However, her current series, which is 2 very short novels. The series is called The Curse Bearer. If you're a romantasy person, these or if you're a paranormal person or you like anything with magic, these are very... Veronica clearly adores Chicago. She's from Chicago. She cares a lot about the city. The city is a character in these books. Yeah. The first one is called When Among Crows. And both of these books, again, very short, like super fast reads, are set in the Polish community of Chicago. They are both... I guess they're not retellings. They're sort of reimaginings of very classic Polish myths. Baba Yaga, the witch, is a character in these books. And the first is called there's like a truly sexy, like romantic character in these books. There's a romance that is I don't want to tell you about it because it's like sort of an unexpected... This is not a romance novel, but there is like this unexpected, like, wow, he's so sexy character, and like a romance that comes through the first book and then into the second. So the first is When Among Crows. The second is called To Clutch a Razor. And they are reimaginings of classic Polish mythology. There's like vampire characters and like some like shapeshifters and a magic flower that like only humans can touch, but like cures in like immortal diseases. Like so they're cool. Sort of, it's all complex and interesting, but like set against this very like clear Chicago. So if that's of interest to you, or if you have a young person in your life who really loved Divergent and wishes, and like you think, you know, what about Veronica's new stuff? This is an adult story, but like it is perfect for like a teenager.
This week's episode of Faded Mace is brought to you by Videntro, a premium leather accessories company that makes a terrific wallet.
So a thing you should know about me is that I love a pocket wallet. I like to be freed from the confines of my purse and the patriarchy. I like to be able to just throw on a coat and put my wallet inside my coat pocket. I like to put it in the back pocket of my jeans, into the pockets of my skirts and dresses, because again, you know, your skirts and dresses should have pockets. This company, Videntro, makes beautiful, fine Italian leather made, cool colored pocket wallets. They also have a bifold wallet if that's something that you're into. I can hear you out there going, pocket wallets, I don't know, Sarah, I have too much stuff. I can't fit it all in there. You don't need all that stuff that's in your wallet. You don't need those receipts from 5 years ago. You need a couple of credit cards, you know, your license, your insurance card, and some cash, and then you're ready to go. And there's more than enough space in a pocket wallet for this.
Travel around the world like a man. My God.
Yeah. As Jen says, live your life like a man. Fuck the patriarchy. Get a pocket wallet. Anyway, the team at Videntro is offering Faded Mates listeners 30% off their order over at videntro.com. That's VEDENTRO.com. And you can head over there, check everything out, and use the code FATED for 30% off.
So Videntro is actually a company owned by my brother. It is, all of the leather is made in Italy. The wallets are made in Italy. They're so beautiful and gorgeous. I have the one that's like navy blue, and then it's like a really beautiful robin's egg blue on the inside. So if you click on the chapter title right now, you'll be taken to the Videntro website where you will be able to see all of the like different colors. And then like there's really cool videos of like Mike at the factory, like watching them like make the wallets and like rolling out the leather. They're all made in Florence. They're beautiful. So if you would like to maybe think about, right, it's early October, the holidays are coming, maybe you want to just really go all in and get yourself and all the people you love a beautiful wallet. The code again to get 30% off is FATED, right? FATED. And we hope that you'll check it out. So thank you to Videntro for sponsoring this week's episode. Okay, so you want to do LA or DC?
Yeah, it doesn't matter. You pick.
Okay, I actually, LA, you know what's funny is, so we talked about this, and so I was really like, I just want to try and find one great book for each and then like have mentioned some others. So I read a book, gosh, I really loved it. One of those books where you're like, why didn't I read this the year it came out? And that is Stars in Your Eyes by Kaysen Callender. Kaysen Callender, they write quite a lot of kind of YA middle grade, and I think this is their first adult romance. And it was terrific. And so in Stars in Your Eyes, it's a very kind of Hollywood set, but in the way in which it was not like in the like sort of like this is all dirty and has made me a terrible person or has like harmed me kind of way. And so it is a gay romance between two actors who are on set of the same movie. Logan Gray is sort of like grew up like a child star, and we find out that he has a very like traumatic background, right? So these are like two young, they're both young though. I think like they're both under 25. So he was a child star, made a ton of money, but, you know, was like blown through it all, has been in and out of rehab, right? Really struggles with like sort of his father is very overbearing. I think he's potentially like a, you know, an executive or something. And, you know, and also just being like a young Black actor and having that background. And what happens is Maddie Cole is like this, you know, beautiful, fresh face young thing, right? Like real sunshiny. I think he has come to LA from Atlanta, and he's like they've been cast in like a rom-com together. And the thing about Maddie is, he had like one hit. You know what I mean? So he's like made one movie and he's like the fresh face new thing. Whereas Logan is already like, I've caused all this trouble, including when a reporter asked him what he thought of Maddie, like flat out being like, that guy has no talent. And now they're going to be in this movie together. Well, so what happens is they are, of course, talked into kind of a fake dating scheme by their representation. And what's really interesting is the way this is like, this book is just so richly layered. And it just, even though what I'm describing feels like, okay, I've read a book like this before, it really felt just emotionally, the emotions here just felt like roiling seas. And so what's happening is Logan essentially is going to get kicked off this movie if Maddie doesn't agree to it. But he is the one who has just told the whole world that Maddie has no talent. But Maddie is so nice that he essentially does agree to it. And he is much less comfortable being out, much less comfortable like with people knowing his background and like kind of knowing who he really is. And so he, in some ways, even though no one else in the world thinks of Logan this way, Maddie thinks of Logan as being someone he can learn something from. Like, he is a great actor and he is so comfortable with his sexuality. Logan is bisexual and has had like open relationships with both men and women in the press. And I think Maddie just sees him as being like, this is someone who can teach me not to be so afraid. One of the things I also really like about this, so it's like dual point of view, but then there's like these kind of interstitial chapters that are like, and I love this, right? News articles, emails, texts, headlines, right? Like, you know, podcast transcripts or interview transcripts. And so there's a real sense of like these two trying to find love together, despite the feeling that like Hollywood, Los Angeles is like a cesspool, you know, that it's so like bright and shiny on the outside, but like how troubled and really traumatic a lot of Logan's past in particular is. So anyway, it was a great book. I mean, I kind of just like fell into it. It came out in 2023. And I think it was just like one of those books is always on my list to read. And then you know how it is. You just keep going. But I was really happy that I went back to it. So that is Stars in Your Eyes by Kaysen Callender.
Nice. A lot of Hollywood books that I'm going to sort of hold till the end because everybody knows I love a Hollywood book. I want to talk about Mia Hopkins's East Side Brewery series.
Yeah.
Because when
That's a great rec.
Yeah, it's a like these are like older books, but I feel like so I haven't reread them recently, but man, I still remember these like three brothers who run a brewery, and like in the first one the first one is a guy who like was in prison and gets out of prison, and he comes home to his like. You know what I love about these books is like there's a small town feel to them, but, which is like a very big city thing. Like if you spend any time in a big city, like your neighborhood is
Mayberry.
Just like any small town there is. And so in the first one, which is called Thirsty, the hero gets out of prison, comes home to his like small town community in on the east side of Los Angeles, and like it's a girl from it's like the perfect like straight A's like girl from high school, and they fall in love. And then he gets a job at a brewery, and then he and his brothers all become involved in this like brewery. And there's this sort of running joke through the whole series that like breweries are white people shit, but like these are like Latinx men, right, who are like running this brewery and all like involved in this. And it's so the whole thing revolves around this like kind of cool like up and coming brewery and these three brothers. And so the one that I am going to talk about today, or the one that I sort of like point to as like this is the one that really feels like this is the one you should read, is the third one, which is called Tanked. And it begins with this like great moment where the heroine of this of the book is Deanna, and she's there with her like friend who's like she's had too much drink. The friend has had too much to drink, and Deanna like just wants to go home and like, but is like there because like the friend doesn't want to leave, and she's a good friend. She's not going to leave her friend, right? And so she ends up like there's of course there's like kind of a sleazy guy who's like being sleazy, and then the guy behind the bar kind of like saves them in a certain way, like a real romance moment where like it's sort of they're saved, and like he pushes this guy out, and then like stuff happens. This is all in the like first chapter, and then she basically like they're outside and it's dark, and like the bar is kind of closed, and she like in the mess she's left her credit card, and like she comes back, and then he's like they're sort of like chatty, and they have this like kind of very intense, like not even super bantery moment, but they're just like clearly hot for each other. And then he's like, can I kiss you? And she's like, nobody ever wants to kiss me. Like, sure. And then he does. And it's so incredible. And she's like, come home with me. And he's like, yes. And so they go home, and they have this like, it's off page, but like they go home. And then the whole book moves forward 3 years. And he's been like into her for 3 years and just like waiting. But they like nothing has happened between them. And now the pandemic is happening. So like this is one of those few books in romance where the pandemic actually is going on. And so I think like there are just interesting things, and Mia makes really interesting choices. I think these are like two very lonely people, despite the fact that they are in community. Deanna is like a social worker, and she's working she's doing a lot of like big kind of work around social work during the pandemic with the community. There's like, it's just a really interesting, Mia's doing a lot of things in this book. I'm also like, at the time, I was not super into seeing COVID on page in romance, but like I went back to this book this week, and I was sort of like, oh, okay, like it's interesting to see the book like reflect what's going on there. Like there are there are like tests. So like there's sort of a sense of like the pandemic being around.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really interesting.
Yeah.
And all this is to say, and also it's it's very sexy. And it's just like, if you're just looking for a book about like two people who are somehow isolated while simultaneously being like very like surrounded by people, this is a good example of how like a romance really can look that way. Yeah. And also I think these are two characters who just like really move through the whole thing. They evolve over the course of this book. Like, this is a book where characters begin in one place and end in another. And all these books just feel very honest. Like she writes really honest romance.
Yeah, I love Mia's books. I, listening to you describe that, realized that I might not have closed the loop in book 3.
It's great.
Right?
And I actually wonder, I think a lot of people were like, I'm not ready for a COVID book.
Yeah, maybe, right? But now it feels like maybe we're ready. I'm going to recommend a YA book, a YA author I really love who is from LA and writes books set in LA is Maureen Gu. And I'm going to talk about
Maureen.
Hi,
Maureen. I know you listen to us too. Hi.
I am like, The Way You Make Me Feel, which is her first book, is I like was obsessed with. Like, it's like one of those YA romances that you read where you think like, if I was 15 and read this, it would have changed my life. You know what I mean?
Aww.
But I'm going to talk about, and I mean, maybe I've mentioned this book before, like one of my favorites in terms of like the LA of it all is The Way You Make Me Feel. And in this one, the Clara Shin is, I think she's like a junior, senior in college. And she has an enemy, not a frenemy, an enemy, Rose Carver. And the two of them, in sort of like one of their, like they're pranking each other goes wrong, set their like high school gym on fire, and is as like penance essentially, right? Like to make up for it. Clara and Rose have to work together on her father's food truck, the Cobra, Kobra, because it is a mashup of Korean and Brazil, which is like her father's like Korean parents moved to Brazil. So he has like Portuguese accent in English. There's this really funny line I remember where Clara was like, people don't really know what to make of him because they look at him and he's speaking like Portuguese accented English. And then she's like, it really helps with the ladies, like, ew, right? Because her mom is kind of out of the picture. Anyway, the romance is between Clara and Hamlet, who is a Chinese American kid who like works at his parents' coffee shop. But just like the whole vibe of the book, especially I think because it's on a food truck, right, is like, it's like, how in fantasy, they're always like on the road, like walking around to like see the world. I feel like that's what food truck romance is at their best, right? Mm-hmm. We're seeing the world that the truck is in. Mm-hmm. And, like sort of the whole idea
like small
of
time, like community.
Right. Yeah. And like the nature of like the food and how people, are kind of like, what is Korean Brazilian food fusion? And, Clara's relationship with her dad as a single father. And, I think they live in like Echo Park maybe, or right. And it's just like one of those books where like you say a book set in LA and it like popped into my head. And it's just like a really great read. It's like a really sweet romance between Clara and Hamlet, but also like a really great redemption story between Clara and Rose. And the whole idea of kind of like, how have you decided someone's your enemy? And then like, how are you going to get over it? Right. And so, I really, really love this book. So it's The Way You Make Me Feel. And actually is really fun because looking at this today, I realized she has actually, a book coming out early next year, called One and Only, and it is her adult debut. And I don't know if it is a romance, but it sounds like maybe it is. And I am
It is a romance and I have it.
Shut up. I'm going to be going to Edelweiss right now and looking for it. So I'm really, really excited about that. So that is Maureen Gu. She writes a great YA romance. And look, we're all going to get a treat come February.
Amazing. I have two historicals that I want to talk about. Because as you all know, I love a Hollywood book, but I didn't want to we've done Hollywood before, right. So I didn't really, and also it doesn't feel like super LA. So, but I do think like both of these historicals, I mean, I think when you talk about the history of a place, it does sort of steep itself in like place, right? Historical's like a place. So first I want to talk about Amanda Quick's The Girl Who Knew Too Much, which is Jane Ann Krenz, who writes as Amanda Quick, wrote three kind of Hollywood, this kind of like Southern California set romances. The Girl Who Knew Too Much is set in the 1930s and begins in New York City when the heroine, who is the personal assistant to like some kind of very big like person, businessman, she discovers her boss murdered, and there is a note for her that he's left, and all it says is run. So she does. This is, I mean, classic beginning, right? Come on, Amanda knows how to begin a book. She runs and she goes basically as far as she can possibly go, which is Los Angeles, where she reinvents herself as a gossip columnist in LA. And I think what this book sort of speaks to, and also the other one that I'm going to talk about, which is by Maureen Lenker, is this kind of like historical romance set in Los Angeles has a very sort of clear theme, which is like, you can be anybody, right? It's a real like Pretty Woman, like what's your dream kind of thing. But like, I think now LA it still sort of traffics in that, but it's not, like if you set it during the like rise of the golden age of Hollywood, it really is like you can just be literally anybody and move out to LA and like, boom, you're, Cary Grant, or boom, you're whatever. So she just decides she's going to be a gossip columnist. Of course, as a gossip columnist, she quickly stumbles upon a second murder, which all of a sudden it's sort of the question is like, is this murder related to the one in New York? Like suddenly things start to really like get complicated and confusing. And also she's like in hiding, which is a problem when she meets the hero, who is an ex-magician and now a hotelier.
It's a lot.
But like, again, like Amanda Quick, Regencies, like an ex-magician makes sense. Like that's sort of like I can just like, poof, here's a book of, erotica or whatever it is from the old stuff. Anyway, the pair, so they sort of are, they're like skulking around Hollywood, old Hollywood, trying to figure out like what's been going on, what's the deal with these murders. They're trying to solve this mystery. And listen, like Amanda Quick basically invented the like romantic mystery. So it really delivers. It fires on all cylinders. It's not as sexy as some of her other books. Like this is pretty slow burn. But it is, the pages turn and it is very fun. And also it sort of paints this really glamorous picture of like how Hollywood like came to rise up out of the desert, which is interesting. And then the other, I'm not going to get too deep into it because we've talked about it before, but, Maureen Lenker has written 3 books now about kind of old Hollywood, and they sort of roam. Like the first book is set in Reno, Nevada, but the second one I think is called His Girl Hollywood, and that one is set flat out in Hollywood, and is a it's basically, that's like second chance. Arlene, the heroine, wants to be a movie director. But she is like hired basically like as a PR stunt by a studio. And they give her this chance, but then they hand her a star, and the star is Don Lazzarini from The Old Neighborhood in Brooklyn, or in New York, I don't know. I think it's Brooklyn in my head, who basically like disappeared on, like they were sort of like childhood sweethearts, and he disappeared on her, and now they like, they're stuck working together, and they have to like resolve their past tensions, but the mob is involved because of course the mob is involved. Sure. It's old Hollywood. And so there you go. That's Maureen's His Girl Hollywood.
Perfect. Don't forget our friend Chris Rice writes a lot of his books set in Southern California. And obviously they're all really fun and, really like soapy, big over the top fun. So check out Chris Rice, of course, too.
And then I'm also going to put, while we're on the LA front, I'm going to drop a link in show notes to a list of Latino bookstores in LA. And so you'll be able to go check those out and support. Many of them have a social justice component where if you shop from them, you are also donating to LA organizations. And I want to talk about, I have a place that I have been raising money for in LA for a long time. And let me just get the information. And also, if you're looking for a specifically LA-based immigrant rights organization to learn more about, follow online, and donate to, the Coalition for Humane Immigrant Rights, which is abbreviated as CHIRLA, was founded in 1986 and has been doing this kind of immigrant family work for a long, long time. This is what Jen and I were saying earlier. Like, we do not need to reinvent the wheel. There are organizations that have been doing this for 40, 50 years, especially in cities. I mean, that is the one bonus to this happening in like big cities is we are prepared. All those cities are organized already. They're prepared to do this kind of work. And many of them have been pivoting to like real on the ground social justice and human rights work. Unfortunately, that is where we are right now. But you can find more information about CHIRLA at CHIRLA.org. And that is, we'll put that obviously in show notes. You can donate there and, volunteer if you're local with them.
Okay, so DC.
Let's talk about Tracy.
Listen.
You saw guys, Tracy.
I did, and it was terrific.
She's the best.
She is the best. So, yeah, go ahead. Where you did some fun rereading this morning, I heard.
You guys, this morning, I reread the beginning of Love Will Always Remember, which is an amnesia book.
It is so good.
Listen, let me paint you a picture. The heroine of this book is engaged. Oh, it has everything you could possibly want. It's an amnesia book. It has twins.
Anything you could want if you mean Sarah McLean.
I mean, I guess there is that, right?
I wanted it too. It's fine, everybody.
Where was I? When I was in Sweden, and somebody was like, "Can you tell us about these books?" Because I was promoting 9 Rules and 10 Ways, right? And I was like, "God, they're 15 years old. Like, I don't know that I can tell you anything about these books." But literally, at one point, I was like, "Well, there are twins." Because of course there are. Anyway, Leighton Clark has been in an accident. She gets into a coma. She like falls into a coma. When she wakes up from the coma, and it's not that long, she's lost her whole memory for the last 6 years. And 6 years is like a long time. During those 6 years, she has been engaged. She's gotten engaged. And her very handsome fiance is in London. He's like fucked off to London for some reason. It's not important. But he's left behind Jonathan, his twin brother. And his twin brother who like is basically like he is there and he is like pretending to be her fiance because like it's sort of, he doesn't want to, he's a decent guy and he just doesn't want to like upset the apple cart. As it is, she doesn't really remember anything, right? And so he sort of has this whole plan that's like like Leighton, one of the cool things about amnesia romance, and I think like a thing that really, if you're gonna write an amnesia romance, and it's funny because somebody told me recently you get one amnesia romance in your entire career.
I think that is probably correct.
I think you can only do it once. You better do it right. But I think the interesting thing about amnesia romance is like the whole point of it is that when you wake up with amnesia, you are very different than you were.
Yeah.
Right. So
sure.
At the time, like Leighton has been like prior to this, like before she got into coma, she was like super like straight laced, like very proper, kind of a bitch, like very sort of difficult to like a tough nut to crack, if you will. Mm-hmm. And now she's like more open, like she's not as like caged by expectation and, you know, whatever built her. Like now she is, she remembers, like one of the first things that they ask her is like, do you remember what year it is? Like, do you like what, you know, whatever. And so she talks about like she remembers like being at a party on the Potomac River, and it's like years and years ago. And she sort of like has this very clear memory of it. And like remember the way she remembers what New Year's Eve is. Like she, you know, as Tracy writes it, she's like, she remembered New Year's Eve because she remembered when Harry met Sally. Like she knew what New Year's Eve was, but like, and it has this like sort of magical feel to it. And then you obviously realize that like before she woke up from this, from the coma, she was not a person who would ever have like thought about a rom-com as like an identifying character or identifying, you know, location or event. So anyway, so all this is to say, she wakes up, she's like softer, she's like more open, she's more willing to like love, she's more willing to like experience, and she has lots of questions because she cannot remember the last 6 years of her life. And so Jonathan basically tells her like, I'm your fiance, I'm a chef, I'm very talented, I am very handsome, let me show you your apartment. And she's like, she asks him a lot of questions, and like he sort of dances around. He doesn't fully kind of know her because she's very different now. And then they like, and there's this great moment where she's like, so we are fiancés. Like, when are we going to bang? And he's like, what if we waited until the wedding? And she's like, like, it's all just perfect. It's so well done. It delivers all the different like pieces of an amnesia romance that you could possibly want, but also it's like very sexy because Tracy writes a really sexy book. It's really fun and kind of like off the wall because it's an amnesia book. It's going to deliver on a lot of like, you're going to be very happy reading this book, but also it's set in DC. And so like, there's lots of reference to like the neighborhoods that they live in, like the ways that the neighborhoods look, like where, you know, how the neighborhoods exist and like the communities and cultures of these neighborhoods. Like Tracy just really delivers a truly like realistic DC experience while giving you the most bananas romance plot there is.
It's so good though.
I know. And the whole time I was like, maybe I can write it. What's my
When's your amnesia romance coming,
When
Sarah?
is my amnesia romance coming?
The entire audience right now is like, bitch, we thought you forgot about Duchess.
No, I did not. In fact, I posted about her this morning. Did you see those pictures of Hannah Waddingham? Oh my God.
That's not even right. Okay.
She's amazing. Anyway.
Okay. I am going to talk about Something Cheeky by Tin Kim Lam. Now, this is kind of it's not, when I was looking at this, I thought this is like a series, but essentially there's like 3 books. I don't think this series has a name, but in 2 of the books, I think maybe I've talked about happy endings when it came out. There's sort of like a group of people that have ties to both New Orleans and DC. And so in the first book, I think Trixie like leaves New Orleans for DC. In the second book, one of the characters goes like from DC to New Orleans for like a essentially a vacation and meet somebody. But in this book, in Something Cheeky, it is like kind of the full DC setting. So, you know, again, Tin Kim, I think, might live in the area and it just feels very DC. So in this one though, Zoe Tran has a boutique where she is the owner, she's the designer of like plus size lingerie. Mm-hmm. And this is like her dream. Like she's always been a person like designing costumes and right. Like she'd worked in theater in college, and her bestie was Derek, and together they had actually wrote, I guess, I can't remember the exact details, dreamed up, whatever, a kind of Vietnamese Cinderella, like rock musical for the stage. And then they had like a falling out. And one of the things about this is like real friends to lovers, where he was, just like really into her, but didn't, know how to say it. And, they're college kids. And so, you drift apart and these things happen. And so, but now he's back, and he is wanting to put on their show it's like Washington, D.C.'s like largest theater. And it would be an all Asian cast, an all Asian creative team. Everything about it would just really be to appeal to like their community. And what happens is that she is not really sure this is a good idea, right? Like, they have this falling out, and she, she's just not sure. It's like water under the bridge, right, to her. So anyway, she agrees to do it, but it's hard for her. Like there was all these microaggressions and all these things that she had to deal with in the theater world, that being in charge and owning her own business, right, means that she doesn't have to really deal with that anymore. And so what happens, of course, is it's interesting. She's demisexual. She really had only seen him as a friend, but somehow now things are different. And she's, her feeling for him kind of come up to the surface. If you've never read, Tin Kim is also like a sex educator. So her books are like crazy sex positive. And anyway, they are pressured by a white artistic director, someone at the theater, to essentially like tone all the Asian down. And so now it's like, how are Zoe and Derek going to respond to this challenge, to their dream and vision for what this show should be, and like who they are as people. So it's great. It's terrific. It's called Something Cheeky. And as I said, it's not called, I like really was sure it was like have a series name, but there are 3 books, and these are all like, we've met Zoe as like Trixie's friend, and like we've met these characters before, I think, from what I remember. So that is Something Cheeky.
Cool.
Great.
Let's see. I have lots of others. Should we talk about Rebecca Kincaid?
Yes, we should. Because
let's talk about Rebecca Kincaid. Adriana told us to read Rebecca Kincaid the other day, as you all know.
And I was like, sure.
We have done what we were told. And I want to talk about Streams and Schemes very much.
Sarah, I started this book and immediately was like, yes, this is how romance used to make me feel. And I like feeling this way right now.
As many of you know who listen to the podcast, or who have been listening to the podcast for a long time, I am a fucking sucker for chapter 1, we're gonna die, we better bang. Like, anytime anybody's like, danger bang is not a fun trope.
You are wrong.
Realistic. Like, see your way out, because
right out into this book. I like stopped and actually texted someone. I was like, I just read the most insane thing. I'm going to need you right now to get this book.
It is terrific. So, okay. The beginning of this book, Valeria, our heroine, and Lander, they are neighbors, next door neighbors.
And they're like fancy DC apartment building.
Yeah. And Valeria is a OnlyFans like streamer. Like
she's a cam girl.
Like she's a cam girl. She's a sex worker, and she has always like had she's like been eyeing the neighbor, but like this is not a thing you do. You don't fuck your neighbor.
And she's figured out he's a lawyer.
Yeah, and she has a rule: no lawyers, and also like has clearly some secrets that are we don't know about. And then, but Lander is the next door neighbor, and he's very handsome, and that's all you need to know for right now.
Wait, before this, what Sarah's
they
about to
have like a moment in the elevator.
Yeah, where like they've kind of eye fucked each other, but nothing's happened.
Maybe we should just do a deep dive on this book.
We should. You know what? God.
Wait. Okay.
No, like that's a great idea.
Okay. Maybe we should do a deep dive on this book. Anyway, because now we're only like four paragraphs in. But anyway, so listen, there is an alert that goes off on their phones.
It's so wrong. It's so
and
wrong.
They realize that and the alert basically says, and like, here's my thing. I hope this alert is not a real thing. Like, I don't want to know this. Although the alert basically says, like, there's a nuclear weapon coming for DC.
20 minutes to live.
You're fucked. Like, you have 20 minutes to live or 15 minutes to live. So what else would you do than walk in? I mean, this makes sense. You sort of walk into the like the hallway outside your apartment and you're like, is this for real? And then you turn to the right and there's your hot neighbor. I'm going to climb that like a tree. Like, this is how I should go. This is how we go.
Go out with a literal bang.
They actually just super bang.
Yeah, it's crazy hot.
And it's very hot. Like, talk about a book that begins with a bang. Like, we did a whole episode. Like, this book didn't exist at the time.
Let's go back and re-record that episode.
Wait, then it's like 12 minutes go by.
Yeah.
And then they get a second alert.
Any minute now. They're like, any minute now, just like waiting.
Yeah, they're having that like moment, which is actually the moment that I really love, where they're like, this is like the human connection before the end of the world. And then they get a second alert and they're like, so sorry. That was a mistake.
And Valeria gets up and basically runs out.
Beats the hell out of Dodge. She's like, I'm out.
Yeah.
And he's like, wait.
I've been lusting after you for a solid year.
No, and she's like, too fucking bad. No, like, it never happened.
And you know what it is? Like, you would not guess where it goes from there. I was delighted reading this book.
It also has a little bit of that run, Posey, run action where then he's actually he is a client. Like, he watches her stream and he's always been like super polite. And now he's like, let me throw you, you know.
Well, he's been spending money on her for a year.
There's this great moment also where he's like, I'm going to give you $500 for like a private room or whatever. And then she's like, this is my job.
Yeah.
Like, could you please? I'm at work. And he's like, oh shit, you're right. Like, there's just this like very cool, like respectful of like sex work moment where he's like, oh yeah,
and
I
that
guess
keeps
we will
happening. And then when he keeps being a jerk, she's like, anyway, listen, it was great. It was terrific. And I was like, what a beginning.
I mean, I feel like we might do a deep dive on this, so I don't want to say much more.
That's not, we're going to say much more.
But also but set in DC, feels very DC coded. I mean, Ballistic Threat inbound to DC feels like.
Well, and just like, I think the other thing, like, right, like he has two friends and one is like an iBanker and one is in like the EPA. And it's like, you know, the way they like see people and can kind of tell by the suits and the haircuts, whether or not they're diplomats or
whether they work
like
for
that whole part
government.
of it. That was the part that felt real DC to me.
Agreed. I mean, I had a great
old
time.
days DC, I guess. Maybe.
The moral of this story is when Adriana tells you to read a book, you should do it.
Yeah, agree.
Okay. Let's see. Oh, I want to say, because I've been like adding one sort of wild book to every city here, I want to add in, and I know I've talked about them before, but every time I think about DC books, I think about Pamela Palmer's Feral Warriors series, which is like 15 years old. It's deep paranormal. You know, yesterday I saw Kenya Goribel on Threads say she wanted romantasy where monsters were monsters. And I was like, you want paranormal. That's what you want. And I texted her and I was like, Kenya, go back and reread IAD. But Feral Warriors is like the heroes are all like shifters, or they're not shifters. They have like souls of some animal. There are 12 of them.
Sure.
And the first book in that series is like, honestly crazy. Listen, this whole setup is crazy. There are 12 like men who have like the souls of animals. And together they are the feral warriors and they can like save the world. Classic paranormal setup. But in order for them to properly channel their like warriorness, they need a woman who is like the being that through which all energy channels.
Of course, obviously.
And she is the fated mate of one of them. And so, but she doesn't know. You don't know. Like if like, so every time one of them dies, another one, like some person just living their life in the world, some like random middle school English teacher could just become the energy life force of feral warriors. And so the book begins with like, their like energy life force lady dies, and then the lion shifter goes off to find her. This is called Desire Untamed, everybody, because of course it is. And he finds her like in her apartment, and he's like, hey, so this is your life now. And she's like, what? And then he brings her back to DC, where she and like on the trip back to DC, it's very clear that these two are fated mates. Like they cannot stop touching each other. Like they're so hot for each other. And then they get back and they do this like ceremony to see if like who because she's of course she is the fated mate of one of the 12, but they have to do a ceremony to figure it out. And they do the ceremony and she's the fated mate of a different one. Oh, and then it's the first time I've ever seen this. Like, you feel like fated mates, but you're not actually fated mates. And so how do you thread that needle? Which Pamela Palmer does interesting. But the point is that when they do these, I'm sure that this is not the case, but in my mind, when they do this ceremony, it's like at the National Zoo. I don't think it is at the National Zoo, but it's like, it is in a very like public DC place. And honestly, the whole Pamela lives in DC, like, it feels very like it's all very like DC coded space, but also like,
yeah.
Anyway, you're going to have a great time. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it. Just, yeah.
Also, have to say, even though we've talked about it a million times, but Pride and Protest by Nikki Payne is very DC set. This is also about gentrification. And the heroine is a radio DJ who like is up against a real estate developer that's like, I think the corporation is called the Pemberley Corporation. Like this is a retelling of Pride and Prejudice. And she is trying to like save her community and her space from her housing, like the place where she lives with like, she lives with like a very chaotic family full of people. And she's trying to save her space from this like terrible housing developer. And the hero works for the housing developer. And it is great because it is written by Nikki, and it's about gentrification and how billionaires should not exist.
Well, there you go. And then like a final shout out from Mia Sosa, The Worst Best Man. And also, what was the one after that one? Like what are the new one is LA, because it's mostly actually set in New York and LA, which is When Javi dumped Mari. I'm always wanting to say met, and it is not, because that is When Harry Met Sally. But in the previous series, the wedding, what I think of as like the wedding books, right? The Wedding Crasher and also The Worst Best Man are both set in DC and the area. I think probably most of Mia's books are maybe set in DC, if I remember correctly. So you are definitely going to have a great time reading Mia's books.
Yep. Oh, I have one to add to Chicago. Naima Simone's Blackout Billionaire series, which is also set on, as you referred to, the Gold Coast of Chicago, which I did not know was a thing until you taught me. So everybody, we did a deep dive of that series. We'll put links in show notes, but that's a fun, three very quick, very sexy categories about Chicago.
Well, reading is not protesting, right?
No, it's not getting up out of your chair. but it is a nice way to supplement.
Yeah. Well, and like, you know what? It's going to be a long haul now. And so we have to find ways that we can be, I don't know, like right? Like filling the well. And I think for a lot of us, that's romance, which is why we're here. So, it is just vitally important. Again, like I said, not just for us as a country, but for you as a person to like figure out how you can help the world, right? And that's going to be helping in your community, going out to a protest, right? Finding an organization that needs your support through time, money, donations, phone banking, whatever it is. We are... And I think that's the thing that we have to say, right? Like, this doesn't magically go away until we all together get up and make our voices heard. And so, maybe we should talk about making phone calls, right?
Can we talk about a few ways that we can make our voices heard, like in the immediate?
Yeah.
Okay. First of all, call your local representatives. Mm-hmm. And this, when I say local, I mean literally local. Your local, your state level representatives, your community boards, your mayors, your town councils. Right. Tell them that you stand against ICE presence in your communities. Ask how they are making sure that ICE is following the law in their communities. Tell them that you are watching. Make sure they know that you are willing to vote against people who are supporting ICE in their communities. Ask for your local, ask your very local people to pass like local legislation requiring no masks, banning ICE from wearing masks, requiring that ICE deliver, do their duty and provide badge numbers, etc.
Yeah. And I mean, in a lot of places, I just want to say, like, local people, the smallest people are doing more than the biggest ones, right? Correct. So yesterday in Chicago, they arrested Alderwoman Jessie Fuentes, who is in a hospital essentially trying to protect one of her constituents, right? The alders are essentially our like city council. Yep. And there are 50 of them. And so, but that just shows you, right, how bold they are. But I've seen really amazing videos of like state senators and state reps, like being out in their neighborhoods, on the block, on the street, so I think that's the other thing is like, you also can tell these people and say like, I saw you. Thank you. Thank you for being out here and protecting us, protecting your people.
It is, speaking of local state reps, it is an off-year election in Virginia and New Jersey this year. The States Project and Fated Mates are working together to raise money to keep Virginia a blue trifecta. That is essential right now. Like, we have to hold the line in Virginia. We won Virginia, a blue trifecta in Virginia last time by like something like 300 votes. Go to Fated States. Go to fatedmates.net/fated states to click on the States Project and learn more about how you can participate in that. But basically, the way you can participate is by donating. The election is literally 1 month from today when we are recording. And so it is vital that we give them the money they need to knock on doors and win Virginia. That said, there are 100,000 or something local elections around the country this year, more than 100,000 people on the ballot. So make sure that you are voting. Make sure that you are volunteering to, if you have time and energy and capacity, please volunteer for local, for Democratic candidates, down tickets. We are coming up on 1 year until the midterm elections. Please consider running for office. This is the big ask. We know. School boards need you. Library boards need you. Also, in a lot of places, library boards are volunteer or they're appointed by school superintendents. You can literally walk into your local school district office and say, how do I get appointed? I want to volunteer for the library board. I want to volunteer. And like that work is literally reading books that are challenged and deciding whether the book stays in the library or leaves. If you have time for that, if you have time to participate with your library committees or your school committees, please do that. Book banning is happening around the country. We know this. It is becoming more and more present. Books are how they are going to get to us. We need you. If you need a person to tell you to run for office again, Jen and I are doing that right now. Yeah. We're saying run for office. We're saying run for school board. Run. We have at least one listener who's running for mayor of her small town. Like, we are so proud of you. We are so happy to help you. We will phone bank for you. We will. We have committed. We have pledged $1,000 to anybody who is out there thinking about running for school board. When Amanda Littman was on talking about this. We'll put this episode in show notes too. But when she came on, she told us most school board elections in the United States can be won with $2,500. We'll give you $1,000 seed money. So please consider running for office. That's obviously a huge ask, but important. No Kings protest is October 18th. I'll be out there with signs. Hopefully you will be too. If you're a Firebird and you're out there with signs, we won't post them because we want to keep people safe, but we'd love to see them. So please send them to us, DM them on Instagram. Yeah. That's the big stuff.
Yeah. I think the other thing is like calling your representatives and senators. And if you've never done that before and you are not sure how to, you can use 5 calls, which is a service where essentially like you put in where you live and it will tell you who to call. You would say what you're calling about and it will provide a script for you. You can also use ResistBot. I really like ResistBot because you can pay a couple bucks and send faxes. And I love the idea of like just jamming up the fax machines in these Capitol offices with like, sort of our demands. And so, one of the things we also know is that like, if you make a stink and if we are heard, right, like this is, and you might be saying like, listen, I am in a deeply red state and they're not going to care, but like you care and they work for you. And so, it is okay for you to like, I get a lot of joy out of making these calls and telling them my address and my zip code and where I live and making them listen to me. And you know what? And I know like sometimes they don't answer and that is why, or like, right, the phone box, the mailboxes are full on the voicemail. And that's why I really love ResistBot because I love being able to send faxes. So, there are structures out there that exist that will teach you how to do this in case you are, you're not sure. And sometimes, listen, every time I make a phone call, sometimes I still feel charged, right? Like it feels, kind of scary in a weird way, but it's not. And so you can do it. And like ResistBot and 5 calls will help you figure that out.
Yeah. We are not fucked, you guys. We are not. Like, hope is how we get through this. Resisting is how we do this. There are, you pull on your thread, you trust other people are pulling on their threads. We are standing with Chicago and Los Angeles and DC and other places. Portland. We love you, Portland. I've been seeing pictures of people dressed as clowns in Portland, just like mocking the shit out of ICE officers. And like, listen, and I'm going to say this, like, white women, we
have a lot of power,
have so much power, and we are so complacent. And like, truly, if we mobilized to stand up, we could really do some damage. So I know that most of our listeners are with us. And I know that in many ways, this is the scariest thing. But if we work together, and that is another thing I'm just going to say again, mobilize.us, find a community. There are people in your community, I don't care how tiny your town is, there is somebody else in your town who wants to stand up. And so the goal is to find them. And we love you. Thanks, everyone. I'm Sarah McLean. I'm here with my friend Jen Prokop. We are Fated Mates. You can find us every Wednesday wherever you get your podcasts, or you can find us on fatedmates.net. Also at fatedmates.net, if you click on episodes, you will get all of our amazing show notes, which are going to be comprehensive this week. We will have a list of all the books we talked about, a list of all the organizations we talked about, a list of all the ways that you can get involved, links to our Fated Mates and Fated States episodes where we have interviews with Melissa Walker from the States Project, with Amanda Littman from Run for Something, with young people who are fighting book bans, librarians who are fighting book bans. We have a full plate of things for you to listen to and do. You can also find us online at Fated Mates Pod on Instagram and Threads, and at Fated Mates on Blue Sky. What else? Search something on the website. Make Eric happy.
Join our Discord.
Yeah. Oh, join the Discord. Listen, also, there's a great part of the Discord that's full of activism and people talking about what they're doing in their community. We'll throw up these organizations. We'll make space for, Chicago, LA, and DC and Portland on those places, and people can share there how else we can help in those communities. And we'll be paying attention as we move forward. Listen, don't obey in advance. Don't believe that it won't come for you. Make sure that if you even see a hint of it, you stamp it out. We love you. We're here. Keep us posted online with how you're feeling, how you're doing. Join the Discord at fatedmates.net/Patreon, or you can go to Patreon and search Fated Mates. You get one more episode of the podcast every week and every month. And also access to the Discord where people are talking about romance novels 24/7. Also, they're talking about Anna Waddingham today, so
sure,
I'm enjoying it.